Hey gang, so for this week's Raw Wednesday I'm actually in my filming setup because I've just been filming, so I figured I'd do Raw Wednesday whilst I was on a roll. I've just done a Primark haul, so if you didn't see last week's Primark haul, go and watch that. Sneaky little plug. I'm wearing one of the shirts now and I really like it. So today's Raw Wednesday is about driving lessons and driving. I've had quite a few of you ask me over the years how I found it and what I kind of thought about it and any tips and just like my experience. So I thought I would talk you through my driving experience. Before I get started, if you haven't seen my face before, I'm Alice. Hi, welcome. My little squad here that watches my videos is called Alice's Army. If you want to join the gang, don't forget to press the red subscribe button. I'd love to have you. I do videos like this every single Wednesday. I do 3 videos a week total on this channel and I have a vlog channel, so come and join the gang. Anyway, enough promo from me. I've been talking too much and I can't breathe. Okay, so driving lessons. For me, I actually was so scared to start driving lessons. So for those of you that don't know, I am 21 and I passed my driving test just before my 18th birthday. I started when I was in year 11 at school, and because my birthday is in July, I passed in June, so I just passed like a month early. And when I turned 17, I wasn't ready to learn to drive. I felt the pressure to learn because a lot of my friends were already learning because I was one of the youngest at school, and I was feeling the pressure and I felt like I should because I had a provisional and I just felt the pressure, you know. I actually used the fact that I hadn't ordered my provisional as an excuse for quite a while, but then for Christmas or for my birthday I think my grandma bought me my provisional, so then I didn't really have much of an excuse. So around Christmas time I decided to set myself the New Year's resolution of learning to drive, and I had been using an app on my phone to learn like the theory side of it. So if you're like thinking of doing theory, there is a really good app to look at. Like there's loads of apps, I can't remember exactly the one that I used, but there's so many on the App Store and they're all free, and they ask, let me tell you, they ask exactly the same questions as are in the theory test. Like I basically memorised that theory test, so when I went into it I knew everything and I passed my theory test no problem. The only thing I had to borrow from a friend was like some of the hazard perceptions, which if you don't know what that is, it's basically you watch a video and say like a little old lady walks past on a Zimmer frame, you have to click on the screen when you see like something that might go wrong and click a bit faster when it's like more of an issue. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I had to borrow a disc off my friend to do that, but I'm sure there's so many online things now. I mean, this was 3 years ago. I am old. So yeah, the theory test part of it was definitely, I worked it up to be a lot more scary than it was. As long as you prepared yourself, you'll know the answers. Honestly, I used to just like spend the evenings just running through the app and doing some tests. I literally knew off by heart, just by habit, like the answers to every single question. So I didn't even like specifically try and drill the answers into my head. I just kind of learnt them along the way. Like I didn't really properly revise. I mean, at this point I was in like last year of 6th form. That was the last thing I needed to be doing more revision. So yeah, I just did the app every so often when I had some free time, and that worked really well. And then in the January, because I'd set myself a New Year's resolution of passing my driving test, I think I booked my first lesson for like the 16th of January, like sometime there, and I used the same instructor that my brother knew because he said he was really nice. So if you have that opportunity to go with someone that knows someone or someone that you've heard good things about, definitely do that, because then you've got like a thing in common. I was personally gonna, well, I thought I was gonna find sitting in a car with a complete stranger for an hour really awkward, and it actually wasn't. Like, I'm not sure if this applies to every instructor, obviously it's a personal thing, but my instructor was the pro at small talk and like talking about life and anything, and right from the get-go, like right from the first lesson, I kind of felt comfortable around him. He was a really friendly person, and I feel like that's really important because you're going to spend a lot of time in close proximity with this person, and you kind of want to get along with them. At least I wanted to anyway. And like because he taught my brother, he was asking about my brother, so it was a nice connection, you know. So for the actual driving, my first lesson actually took place pretty close to my house. I got in the passenger seat at first and he drove us to like a local, it actually started on a roundabout, which sounds really weird and kind of scary, but this roundabout was getting constructed at the time, so like they were building a new road off it and the road hadn't finished, so I was parked on the new road and I swapped seats with him. And at this point, I'd only ever driven my friend's car once, very badly, for about 10 metres. So I hadn't really driven before at all. I vaguely understood the gears and where my feet went, but I wasn't very prepared. And I put my car into first gear and he kind of showed me the biting point. If you've never driven a car, basically it's got 3 pedals, accelerator, brake, clutch. It's like ABC but written like in reverse. And the clutch has to be down for you to change gear. And I just did that, put my foot on the clutch, put it into first and did the biting point. If you've done driving lessons, this will make sense. If not, don't stress. It makes a lot more sense actually going to do it rather than listening to someone explain it. It's a lot more logical when you can physically try and do it yourself. And that was something I was really scared about, actually doing it and like crashing the car, but like it's fine. So I did the biting point a few times and it was a lot easier than I thought. So we ended up setting off and we drove, and actually on my first driving lesson, fun fact, I drove at 60 miles per hour on some country roads. And I feel like that was my driving instructor's use way of doing like a scare tactic, because I think he could tell I was a little bit nervous, and it was like a way of saying to me like, look, if you can drive like this, you can do it, there's no need to be worried. And obviously not every driving instructor is going to make you drive at 60 miles per hour on the first lesson. Like, that might seem really scary, and if someone had told me I was doing that before I actually did it, I would have freaked out. But I did it, and I feel like that kind of shows you that you adapt to it no matter like what the situation is. You kind of just do it, which is cool. So I basically just went down this country lane and went to 60. So I was like, just went into first gear, second, third, fourth, and every so often he'd ask me to pull over and he'd say, how do you feel now? How did that feel? And I'd be like, okay, that was good. I think he pulled me over like 5 times, and each time he said, how do you feel? How was that? And each time I got a little bit more confident. So I think that was really nice, and I came back home buzzing, and I remember being so excited that I'd just driven and I'd done 60 miles per hour. I think I told everyone that I know at least 5 times that I did 60 miles per hour on my first driving lesson. So yeah, that was my first lesson. Obviously everyone's different, but it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, and I couldn't say that I loved driving, but I didn't hate it, so I was definitely like up for doing more. So I booked my next lesson before I got out of the car, so I made sure that I'd booked a new one even before I'd left. And originally I did 1 lesson a week, so I did them like I think every Tuesday after 6th form. And then after a few weeks I decided that sometimes the break in between was too long and I felt like I was forgetting some stuff or like getting out of the swing of it, and I felt like the longer I left in between lessons, the more nervous I was about going to do another one. Say for example, if I went on a Tuesday one week and a Friday the next week, that's quite a big gap between them. So I used to get kind of anxious about it. I mean, there was no need to, because after lesson 3 my instructor said I was doing so well, and it was like I'd done like 10 lessons, and for some reason I picked it up really well, don't know why. So yeah, but it still kind of made me anxious, so I ended up going to 2 lessons a week. Obviously that depends on your financial situation as to whether you can afford that, but at the time I was working as a photographer and I was earning like £50 every weekend, so my lessons were £20 for an hour, so I spent £40 a week of my wages on my driving lessons, which was something that I was actually really proud of, you know, like paying for my own driving lessons. I don't know, it's like my own little thing, and I used to use it as like a lift home from 6th form. I'd time it to when my lessons were going to finish, and then my instructor would pick me up and then I'd drive myself home. So it worked out really well. I ended up being able to pass, I think around April time. I did my theory like that month, and as soon as I've done my theory then you can go and take the actual like physical driving test. I passed my theory no problem. Like I said, I built it up a lot more in my head, absolutely fine, totally the same as the app questions, and I just went into my driving test really. Like, we did like a mock driving test which I actually failed funnily enough, because I made a really stupid mistake, but he said it was fine, and he said that the next time around I corrected it, which was no problem. And then into the actual test itself, I was ready to pass around April, but due to like the test centre being quite booked up and the fact that I had my final A-levels, I didn't actually take my driving test until like, I think it was like 13th of June or the 14th of June, I don't know. All I remember is that it was the day after my very last A-level exam, which was the most intense, nerve-wracking week ever, because I just completed all my A-levels and then I had a driving test, but I wanted it all to be over and done with. So I did that, and I literally booked the earliest test I could think of because I didn't want to sit and wait around all day. I went into the test centre and we all sat down, and then this lady came out. I think she was called Elaine actually, and she, I don't know, she lifted up the bonnet, she asked me like where you put the water and stuff, which my instructor had literally told me like the hour before, because generally before your driving test you have a driving lesson just to kind of like refresh and make sure you're okay. The driving test itself, funnily enough, was probably the worst drive I have ever done, even from like the first lesson. I stalled coming up to a roundabout. I know if you stall on a roundabout then that's a complete fail, but because I stalled before my car actually moved, I didn't fail. I also went into an area that I'd never been in, and after speaking to my instructor when we came out, he didn't realise I'd never been there, so that was the reason I'd never been. What else did I do? Oh, we did a 3-point turn in the road, and the road was kind of like dipped, so like the curbs were here and the tarmac on the road was kind of like this. So my bonnet of the car, like the underneath of the car, kind of scratched the curb on the way round, and the lady was like, "Ooh, that didn't sound good, did it?" And I was like, "No," and I panicked. I thought I've definitely failed. Again, I was kind of anxious about being in a car with someone that I didn't know, because I was so used to my driving instructor, who was like my personal counsellor and life advice person every week, and I was kind of scared about being in a car with a new person again. So I made sure the second she said hello to me and how was I was like, "Yeah, I'm good, thank you, I've just got back from work." And then she asked me what job I did. I told her I was a photographer, and then for the whole hour driving test she was asking me about my job and about photography and about anything. So try and find something to talk about, because it just turned into basically another driving lesson. I was just having a chat with the person that was in the car and I was driving along. Like, that made it a lot easier, at least I think it did. Yeah, so then we pulled up at the test centre after me like scraping the front of the car on the curb, and after me stalling it and going somewhere that I'd never been and not knowing what speed to go. I passed, and I've never been more relieved ever. And I was literally, I said to her, I was like, "That was the worst drive I've ever done." And I said that and I was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that." But you know, I passed, and I was so happy. And I got back in the car, my instructor was buzzing, he was so happy for me, it was great. And he dropped me back off home, and he said, "Don't forget to wave if you ever see me around." So I still now, like, when I see him I'm like, "Hey." I can't actually remember his name, but yeah, I passed. And overall, the experience, I definitely built up a lot more in my head, and I feel like the more you think about it, the more you're going to talk yourself out of it. But once you've made that first jump and done, I'd say at least the first 3, you'll get into it. Like, commit to 3 or 4, and I feel like you'll get used to it. I never loved driving right from the word go. Like, after I passed my test, I got insured on my mum's car. My mum had a Ford Focus. Like, if you know what those cars are, they are huge. And for a first car, it wasn't my car, but I was insured to drive it, so I drove my mum's Ford Focus, and I looked very small. I was 17 and I was driving a huge car, and it was manual, and I didn't like it. And I never liked driving. I only drove because I had to. Like, I drove to work, or I drove to training, or I drove to my friends. Like, I only did it because I had to. I never really enjoyed it, and especially because it was manual. Like, I could do it, but I just overthought it. So I actually now drive an automatic car. That's my choice. I passed in a manual, and I recommend that everyone passes in a manual, just so you know, in case you ever need to, I don't know, like move your friend's car, or if you get a courtesy car. It kind of restricts you if you pass in automatic. So I'm glad I learnt manual, but I'm even happier that I now have an automatic, because it does a lot of the work for me, which means I can concentrate on the road. But yeah, that is basically my driving experience. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a very long video. I'm looking at the time at the top, and this is a very long Raw Wednesdays. So if you got to the end of this video, comment down below, "Ooh, air freshener." I don't know why I thought of that, but air freshener, because like those dangly ones you have in the car. Comment down below air freshener, and I know you got to the end. Thanks for watching. I love you a lot, and I'll see you on Friday with another video. Bye!